One rotation question answered by Doc Rivers. Another big one still looms. Camille and I get into that conversation to get ready for the Miami Heat. This is the preseason's here next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. You can hear me throughout the season on the Bucks Radio Network, which begins Monday nights in Miami against the Heat. You can find Camille on the Locked On NBA show and the Technical Foul podcast as well. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, and thanks to FanDuel as they bring you today's episode. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Right off the top, too, Camille, it's been a lot of episodes I'm sure people have seen with me wearing glasses this summer. It's just one coincidence after another where I went to see a movie last night and it was a late one and you had the contacts in up until like 1 a.m. or later, that it just makes for rough recording sessions and wearing your contacts early in the morning the next day. I've seen people like, he wears glasses? Like, yeah, for over 20 years. I just try to hide it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. My eyes are terrible. Like, if you saw my prescription, you'd be like, are you sure this is accurate? And I'd be like, yeah, like I got the contacts in now, but as soon as we're done, I probably will be putting the glasses right back on.
All right. We've derailed it. And one more. So do you do daily contacts or do you do monthly?
I have like the overnights that you can sleep in.
Oh boy, Camille. Okay. You guys are psychos that do those ones. We said there
wake up with just blurred vision, Justin. Like, it's nice to be able to wake up and be like, oh wow, I can see. Like, my prescription's like -5.25 in like each eye. Is like it's tough when I don't have the corrective lenses in.
Well, leave your thoughts on the right type of contact lens to wear and we'll get to those. We mentioned there was one rotational question that was answered. And frankly, I didn't even think it was a question per se, but we at least got clarification. And it goes back to the, hey, you know what? I got to be honest. I'm really liking everything I'm hearing from the coach and coaching staff so far into this training camp. But that being the role of Taurean Prince, I don't think there were any Bucks fans, even national ones, that when you, me, and Frank were together and referenced how, like, you hear some of the rotations and players that are being mentioned at a national level, and you just think, like, what? I don't think this guy even came up in that context, but Doc Rivers made it clear. Taurean Prince's role is going to be coming off the bench, and even talked about, something we've talked about on this show, and fans had the same opinion last year. Like, I think we just have to recognize what he is. And a lot of times you put him in a position to fail, kind of like what we experienced with Malik Beasley, where it was, hey, Malik, go get the best guard or wing player on the opposing team. Taurean Prince is certainly much more capable than Malik Beasley in that regard. But in many of these, it still wasn't great, where you're asking TP to play the 2 guard and take on that type of matchup that doesn't suit his strength. Doc Rivers acknowledging, we're going to try to not do that this year.
Yeah, a step in the right direction. I mean, even when we were talking about the possibility of Taurean Prince coming back to Milwaukee as free agency was getting ready to kick off, we both were saying, like, would not mind having him back, but please do not bring him back and hope that he can play the 2 for you, because he is not a 2. He needs to be a 3-4, holding those type of guys. Like, if Taurean Prince comes back, please use him in the right spots. And hearing Doc Rivers make mention of the fact that Taurean Prince will be coming off the bench this upcoming season, and talking about how he thought that Taurean had an unfair year. Doc said that, he thought that Taurean had an unfair year, that they put him on the best player every night, and that they don't think that's what Taurean Prince should be doing. Doesn't mean that he can't do it. And when he comes in this season, he might have to do it a time or two, but to start every night that way takes a toll on you. And Doc thought that it did. Doc also said the fact that when you look at the end of the season, I thought that Taurean didn't play as well. And I thought a lot of it was that. And I think he'll be great for us, especially coming off the bench, knowing his role, playing more into his role. I think he's going to have a fantastic year. So to hear Doc say, like, especially coming off the bench, clarifying that while we might know that Giannis is starting, Myles Turner is starting, we did hear as well that Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be that starting point guard. We know that one of those two empty spots is not going to be Taurean Prince, and that he's expected to have a big role off the bench for the team, which I think he can be successful in.
What's the next question you'd like answered? If I said you get one question here, you can ask about the rotation, starting lineup, whatever. Like, what is it?
Well, I want to know who the other two starters are. Like that's where I'm at. You said one?
One. So it has to be who's starting at small forward, or is this player specifically starting? Which I think we would have the same answer.
Like, is it, you think Kuz might get that start nod here?
I don't think, but I mean, I think that would be the question you would ask is, okay, that makes sense for Taurean Prince. Can you enlighten me on the role for Kyle Kuzma this year?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when Kuz was asked about this, I think he had the Wednesday media availability for the team. He was like, no, I don't know what my role is going to be. And I don't believe Doc Rivers has mentioned anything about what the role of Kyle Kuzma is going to be. More so has focused on, we want the shot selection of Kyle Kuzma to be right. And what we've seen so far has been encouraging, but it doesn't seem like it's official for Kuz yet. And that's something that still has to be earned throughout training camp.
I mean, in the same department of the no news is good news, I think like no clarification on that front is good news. If you're in the, I don't think Kyle Kuzma should be starting camp, which I think a vast majority of our audience and present company would be in as well. So I do take that as a somewhat good lack of updates so far. But it's also, I think we talked about this with one of the guys when it was you, me, and Frank a couple of days ago. I think you can lump Kyle Kuzma, I suppose to a lesser extent Kyle Kuzma, but Kuz and Andre Jackson Jr. Into the same camp of like, I think we know what your role is, or I think we know what is going to happen with you, but prove me wrong and just put on a camp that really makes us reconsider everything.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it is. When they were talking about like even the end of the roster spots and like, you know, we got 21 guys coming to camp. We think all of these guys are worthy to be on the NBA contract. Arguably, yes, in the Bucks contract too. So we're going to see how this all shakes out down the stretch of who rises to the top. Like I said, outside of those three spots that we know, it seems that way. And Doc was even asked about Gary Trent Jr., how last year, you know, he came off the bench for a while. And is that the best role for Gary? And he didn't want to confirm like, yeah, bench is the best role for Gary. He was more so talking about like, Gary can be effective in whatever the role is that we give him. We just have to kind of utilize him the way that we think is going to be best for the team. So I'm still holding out hope, Justin, that when we hear the starting lineup announced for the Bucks, next to Giannis and Myles and Kevin Porter Jr., we'll be hearing it's also Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green ? That's a name I haven't really heard too much of or about so far outside of contract extensions and just overall notes from the summer of like, you know, he's looking good. We're excited about him, but not much AJ Green news here. I want to hear more about I want to hear from AJ Green, matter of fact.
Yeah, we got a game coming up on Monday that I think will be interesting to see how the Bucks approach and what we actually see in that game. So we'll get into that conversation a little more coming off of what you just said too about the guards that I want to touch on coming up after the break. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's your 401ks, properties, investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch's built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is here for you. They do the heavy lifting for you, where you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money. without ever touching a spreadsheet. They help you identify whether you're saving as much as you thought. They can notice investment allocations and efficiencies and inefficiencies with those. Discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. They even help you maximize investments, increasing your savings rate, and easily reviewing those finances with a partner or a financial advisor. So don't let opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. You know, the Gary Trent, the comments that you mentioned Doc had, I also kind of took it as we were all assuming, and that was kind of a soft confirmation that he's starting, because I think it was Eric that asked him about it, and Doc jokingly said, like, well, he did did you not notice towards the end of the season when he was starting and the what we got from him? Because the question was basically tied around he was pretty important as a bench player for you. And, you know, is that something that you look at and value and say, okay, we feel like there's more punch on the bench, but like who has consistently done it? Cole Anthony in his role up in the air, we think. At least we haven't heard what it is. So how are you viewing that bench unit? And I think Doc was quick to say, like, not Gary. Gary is going to start and be a big part of what this team does.
Man, that's what I'm hoping for. But you know what? You saying that reminded me of Doc talking about that bench and like the end of it and kind of like what they're looking at for evaluation. I thought that was kind of interesting because he was asked, like, what do you want to see from the guys at the end of the bench? And Doc mentioned that, you know, we want guys that know how to play. Doesn't mean they're great at it yet, but you believe that they have a good feel and they have a future. And it might not be this year. You got to look at guys. It might be a guy that they're even, but this guy is younger and you feel like he's going to keep getting better. And there's a lot of that. And when I heard Doc say that, I was like, that's kind of interesting when you're thinking about how the rest of the roster might fill out, because as we mentioned, there's guys competing for spots. We've talked about, is it, you know, Andre Jackson Jr.? Is it Tyler Smith? Is it Chris Livingston? Is it Amir Coffey? Like who is going to be like at the back end of this bench here? And hearing Doc kind of break it down too in the way of like, it's about the future too. Like it might not be necessarily this year, but can they play? Who has a feel for it? We're kind of trying to figure out all these different angles. And I say that because if you're putting a Gary, you know, Trent Jr. in the starting lineup, and you're thinking about how are we going to match some of the bench production that we were getting from a guy like that. And you're looking at who can kind of fill in. And then you're also looking at who can fill out the end of the bench. And you hope normally, you know, that you don't have to really touch the end of the bench, because normally that means some injuries have occurred and things have gone in a way you so did not envision. But when thinking about that and thinking of who the guys are who are going to kind of take some of these bench roles on, I found it just really interesting to think of like who can kind of fit into some of these boxes that Doc alluded to, of like, it's a lot to consider, not just what they are today, but what they might become. And if we feel like they can actually achieve that.
What you mentioned about the 21 guys that they feel are NBA caliber players, and they're looking for guys that know how to play, even if it's not fully come together yet. Like we trust it's going to get there. How can I put this delicately? Are there any of those guys that we've talked about in these position battles and the quest for the final two roster spots? Are any of them guys that if they were released, you just don't see latching onto another NBA roster?
No, I think they would all at least get another opportunity to stick somewhere, at the very least, like the younger guys as two-way guys. Because I even think about like a Marjon Beauchamp who was traded at the
all right.
deadline.
Let's take two-way out of it then.
No, I'm saying
I know, but
because before he became a two-way guy,
let's remove the asterisk of two-way then. Is there a guy, or are there multiple guys that you said if they were released by the Bucks, they're not getting a guaranteed NBA contract?
Ooh, it would. Now, if it was someone like a Gary Harris, I could see him not necessarily getting that contract right away. He could or even Amir Coffey. If it's one of the vets, they might not get an immediate NBA contract because camps are what they are, but they might be called upon once injuries start to hit throughout the season because they are vets. As for the younger guys like a Tyler Smith and Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, I think Ajax will get that contract because teams have at least seen the defense from him. Tyler is a little bit more difficult because he just hasn't had the playing time. I think a team would take a chance on him, but probably more of that two-way until they can see him in their own building. Yeah. Same for Chris Livingston, where it's like the tape just isn't that long outside of Summer League and G League and things of that sort. So I wouldn't guarantee it, but of the three younger guys, I think Ajax would be the one most likely to just get a guaranteed contract.
I suppose I should answer the question too, since I asked you. And I'm a very fair, impartial person. I can leave my personal beliefs out of it, Camille. Even though some detractors may think otherwise with our stance on Brook Lopez. But as critical as I've been of Andre, I agree. I think he would get a contract with another team that would just say, well, there's something there on this end of the floor. Let's see. It's probably not going to be a great team, or it is a good team that already has infrastructure, and it's just like, we'll bring you along slowly. I think Tyler Smith would probably, just because it's year 2, and especially if you're a bad team that just needs to allocate talent and say, well, let's see if we can hit something with this guy, and he becomes a rotational piece. As we sit here today on Friday, October 3rd, I do not think that opportunity would be there for Chris Livingston. I think it's been, 3 years? Is this already? 4 years. 4 years, I think. I think we've kind of seen enough to know, could you play in NBA games? Sure. What is the role, though? And how invested are we at this point as, Team X in Chris Livingston to really cultivate that? And more importantly, like the questions that we've talked about too, what's even in there? Like, what is the ceiling? I think right now, if I had to provide an answer, I would say of all the guys, Chris Livingston would be the guy that I don't see. I think he'd get a two-way, but I don't think he'd get an NBA contract. Amir Coffey, I suppose, is interesting too, because we're going in blind. So if he just flames out in training camp and you have to reconsider things and it appears like, whoa, he might have taken the camp deal for a reason and it might just be over here. Maybe. I don't believe that to be the case. So I think Amir Coffey would latch on. I think Thanasis would latch on with any team for the obvious reason, probably a team in Los Angeles or New York or Toronto. So I really think Doc has a point in that, yeah, there's guys that would latch. I think there's maybe one that wouldn't, but it goes back to, and I saw this brought up on the subreddit too, of like, we got a problem here. There's too many, and I didn't read the full post to see if it was sarcastic or not, but like, we just have this lump of playable players and who's going to actually get minutes. Yes, that could be an issue for some of those guys, but I mean, we've at least made progress when you look at the last couple of years when you knew this is top heavy and the back of the roster, like, don't expect much. I mean, think about the days, we're not too far removed from them, when the Bucks were carrying second-round draft picks out of necessity for cap reasons. And now we're talking about those types of players. You got like 3 or 4 of them, and only 1 or 2 in this case are going to make the roster.
Yeah, it's a different timeline now for the Milwaukee Bucks in the sense of what the team composition looks like and what they're chasing. It feels like every day that there is media, you hear the players mention at least 2 of the following keywords: youth, athleticism, faster. Like, at least 2 of those words are used every single time. And I think that comes and also expresses itself at the end of the roster, like the competition levels that are there right now in this training camp, because there are guys out here literally competing for their jobs, and they know that, they understand what those stakes are, and they're ready for it. And it's a group effort kind of to a certain degree. And going into this season, I think there's going to also need to be just more group efforts in the sense of trying to knock down those more threes. Like all the things that we've been hearing that they want to incorporate into their offense, into their defense this upcoming year is going to take a lot from everybody, especially like that 3-point shooting piece of it. Like I keep hearing Doc say, like, if we took 3 or 4 more a game, we would lead the league in attempts last year. We're not that far off. So like we're close to it this year. And it's like true, but also losing Damian Lillard and the 9 3-point attempts that he took himself. I think it was like 9 for Dame a game. So like a lot of guys are going to have to collectively step up for this Bucks team, but it feels like a group with chips on their shoulder and a group that's willing to at least put the effort in to try to do it together.
All right. I'm going to spring one question on you.
Oh boy.
Well, I'll think about it during the ad read, whether or not I want to put you on the spot or if we'll save it for next week. But we have that. We got a preseason game to look forward to as well. We'll wrap up the show and the week coming up after this. NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. What you'll love about FanDuel, well, it's easy to use. They give you so many different ways to play, whether it be parlays that you're building, player props on games that you're watching, following the live lines during games, just keeping track of your fantasy team. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the numbers, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. This is a broader conversation that we can, and I think should, or could at least, devote some more time to next week or in the coming shows here. But we've seen some teams find success with this, but, when you look at, and there's no minor league system in the NFL, there is in baseball. When you look at those two leagues, hockey even, I know you're a big hockey person, Camille. You see guys progress and you see young talent develop and all of a sudden like come out of nowhere, like, whoa, this guy, I mean, baseball is where you see it the most of like, this kid was drafted in June last year and now he's pitching some meaningful innings in the postseason for this team, or he's a big piece of your depth. We don't tend to see that as much in basketball. And I get you only got 5 guys on the floor, so there's heightened importance of having your best out there. But even with the G League, and it has been relatively successful, I still don't think we see that story fully told, or at least the instances where it has worked. We don't shine a light on that enough. But why do you think it is that the G League is viewed as it is? And I forget what player I was talking to this about, but they mentioned there's a stigma that comes with it. If you're sent up and down, that like you're all of a sudden, you're just that guy. And I think you can apply that to players like Chris Livingston and like Andre Jackson Jr. and Tyler Smith of like, well, they're fringe guys that they're going to play in the G League and maybe they're the back of the roster. But you have your Chris Middletons that he was the first ever G League player to become an all-star. Fred VanVleet wasn't a G Leaguer, but undrafted and worked his way. But those are so few and far between. And why do you think there's such a stark difference in our sport versus others with that route to the majors, if you will?
I think that it is starting to change a little bit for the G League. It's just taking some time. If you think about when it was the D League still, like when it was that before.
Do you remember that series that ESPN aired back in, I mean, I'm dating myself and it's probably too old for you, Camille, but I think it was 2000 when ESPN did a series following the D League in certain teams. Yep. And this was back in the day. I think it was called Down Low Life in the D League. Where it was like,
I didn't watch it, but I do remember.
It was guys clearly making like $25K a year and like returning TVs to Best Buy. I saw them the film crew chronicling that just so they could bring in money.
Yeah, it was a different time. And I think the D League had more of a negative connotation than the G League does, but it's still not necessarily seen as like, okay, this
It
is an
hasn't
avenue.
completely eliminated the stench of it.
Yeah, like it's still something to it, but I think that in another 10 years, I think that it's going to be looked at more favorably because again, people are still and teams are still getting used to the effects of the new CBA. And one of the things that we talked about like a year and a half ago, it feels like at this point, is that player development is probably going to become more important in the NBA because teams are going to be really looking to build out teams a little bit differently than what they were aiming for before, which was, hey, if we can get this 3 superstar trio here and build this way, like we're going to be gravy. We'll figure out the rest of the roster. Doesn't really matter past 7 or 8 anyway. So we're just going to stack our talent top end. And you're seeing more teams go like, okay, we actually want more depth. Actually, the league's getting younger. Actually, we need to invest more in player development because if we can hit on some of these young guys on these contracts, we're going to set ourselves up to be even more successful with the financial restrictions that we have now to build our team. So I think the league itself is starting to have a higher emphasis on player development. And with that, you will start to see how people view the G League continue to change. Like it's not all the way, it's better now than it was, like I said, when it was the D League, but I think that it's still some ways to go before it's seen as just kind of like part of the fabric of the NBA, similar to how minor league is with the major leagues and MLB.
Yeah. And like we've talked about this the last couple of years that, this is a group where the Bucks have guys that you can actually develop and that we're looking forward to seeing that. I mean, that's what we talked about the last couple of summer leagues of, hey, there's actually young guys to watch here. And even this group, when you look at players like a Mark Sears, who we didn't get a chance to see in G League, I think that's maybe the guy you forgot about. And now you're going to remember seeing starting Monday night in Miami against the Heat of, oh yeah, I was really curious to see what that guy can do. Tyler Smith, and you and I mentioning things that we had heard about how he's progressed. Are we going to see that throughout preseason? We talked about Chris Livingston and Ajax, that there's just these guys, Pete Nance and Jamari Bouye too, just to see, okay, let's keep this in place and see what we can develop from this. And I'm curious, quite frankly, to see, number one, every team needs their own affiliate to get to that point. But then once that happens, there's so much talent in the league too. Like, do we start to increase the number of two-way spots that you can carry? And even then, similar to how we've seen the practice squad treated in the NFL, all of a sudden when they changed those rules, you're like, that guy's in the practice squad? How? He played in games before. Like, if we ultimately see that, where it becomes like, oh, this guy that was on the fringe is suddenly a two-way player, and we kind of relax some of those rules, that there's added depth for teams throughout the season and still limiting the amount of times that he can be around the club or used on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the part of it that's kind of exciting, and seeing how it continues to transform. Like even with the Bucks roster now, like without the two-way spots, like Ryan Rollins, AJ Green, 2 guys who we're expecting to have contributions for this team. Like they started off with the Milwaukee Bucks as two-way guys, and then being in the system, they were able to continue to develop, and now they're on the roster. So again, like I think as teams continue to get used to the system, and now you're at a point too where I believe now doesn't every single team have their own G League team? Or are we at 29 out of 30?
I think we're at 29.
Like it's close to a 1-for-1. And again, 10 years ago, that was not the case where you had clubs sharing G League teams and it just wasn't the same. But now these are really becoming farm systems where the G League team are running concepts that the NBA team runs, so that you can have like that synergy between the two clubs. So I think there's pathways going forward where you continue to see the G League grow, and the thoughts around it continue to evolve into like, this is just part of what we do here.
Yeah. It's been slow growth and evolution, but it's certainly much, much better than where it was. And if you haven't seen it, I would encourage, as soon as we're done here too, I'm going to go to YouTube and see if I can't find, somebody has to have posted an entire series out there, but download the Life in the G League, D League series. So we got a game on Monday night in Miami against the Heat. The Bucks have left for Miami as they wrap up their training camp in South Florida over the weekend. I didn't see any updates on this unless I'm missing it, Camille. I would assume Giannis is not going to be with them in Miami and certainly not going to be playing in that game.
So Doc said yesterday that they actually expected Giannis to fly out either last night or this morning to meet the team in Miami. We don't know if he's going to actually play in the games, but he should at least be with the team Friday at some point.
And then you got Thursday. So, I mean, this preseason schedule is all like crammed into 10 days, which I'm perfectly fine with. It's Thursday at home. And then you have, it wraps up the following Wednesday, I believe, at home against OKC. So 4 games in the preseason. I missed a Bulls game in there over the weekend as well. But yeah, leave your thoughts on your excitement for the preseason, the back of the roster too. The questions I asked Camille, why don't we see as much of a path to the majors, quote unquote, if you will, in the G League? Is that something you view as increasing? And is there a player on the roster, if released, you don't think would make another team's roster? So a lot of questions that we throw out at you today to get your feedback on. As we wrap here, Camille, any big plans for the weekend? I know there's a big event going on tomorrow in Milwaukee.
A big event tomorrow. What's the event tomorrow? What am I missing tomorrow?
Not a big Brewers fan.
Oh, I was like, wait, what? Is it something else? Yes, Brewers Cubs absolutely taking place. That's going to be way out my price range to get into that game. But I will be watching on TV. It's a good sports weekend. WNBA Finals kickoff tonight, so we'll be watching that. Watching Brewers Cubs. Yeah, it should be. I don't have any big plans outside.
Vegas Phoenix? Is it who? Vegas
It's
Phoenix?
the Mercury and the Aces.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll just say this, Camille. My basketball and my baseball fandom has waned the last few years. It just becomes too much to follow. I don't know how you do it with the Packers. It becomes too much when you're embedded with a team throughout the course of 9-8 months. I just can't take on more. That I've reached the point where you feel like your parents of watching a game and thinking like, who is this player? Even in the NFL, of like, who is this guy? Like, he's been on the team for 3 years. Like, he has. That's what I've become in things outside of basketball and the St. Louis Blues and LSU football. I don't feel great about this series. I'm just going to say this. Yeah. I was really rooting for the Padres because I don't know if I can do baseball ever again. If this is another Brewers exit in the postseason, and this one is at the hands of the Cubs and Craig Counsell and that whole narrative, at that point, I think I'm out.
Listen, everyone knows, like, I don't watch baseball until we get to the playoffs here, but I'm ride and die for the Milwaukee Brewers, and knowing it's Chicago with Craig Counsell and all them, like, let's run it up. I'm going to be tuned into every single game because, one, postseason baseball is unlike anything else. It's wonderful.
Well, postseason hockey too.
And 2, Milwaukee Chicago beef is forever. So, like, yes, I can't wait to see how this shakes out, because one of these fan bases is going to be heartbroken that it came at the hands of their rival here to go sit down at home for a little while.
One potentially more than the other. All right, as we get out of here really quick, I'm just going to say this too. We can talk about it off the air. I saw The Smashing Machine last night. That was the movie I was out very late until. Very good. The Rock was good. I think the hype exceeded a little bit. It's good. It's not a bad movie, and Rock certainly was not bad in his performance, but this is not an Oscar film. I'll just say it.
Well, at least you set my expectations right for the movie whenever I do go and see it. So nice to know.
That'll do it for today's show. Hope everybody enjoys the weekend. We hope we're seeing a Brewers victory as well. And we got a preseason game Monday to preview. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk to you once again next week on Locked On Bucks.